You know, the way this is going to end up being, like all changes like this, their intentions are very, very good, I think. I think this is a smart move. I think it makes sense. I'm not convinced it's going to be easier for you, the candidate. I think there's something to the silo that allows you to just say, all right, I'm just going to turn off my phone for a month and focus on structures or focus on systems or focus on contracts and kind of get all that information and really just sort of focus in on it and then take an exam on it and sort of show that you've managed to do that. In this sense, now we're going to be in a situation where, I'll give a couple of examples. I mentioned change orders earlier. You could imagine a question on change orders that, well, clearly it might you might get that question in this last phase of the construction end of things. So in that CE, construction and evaluation, and it would be a specific question about the contractor, let's say, in the time from when the bid was accepted to when the project was able to start. Maybe for unknown international reasons, the steel price went up 14%, say. The contractor wants to ask for a change order. Is that okay, right? Now, to actually answer that, the question would have to have a bunch more information because it would depend on the specifics of the contract. Was there a guarantee? A bunch of other things. But that kind of question would easily show up in that of the construction and evaluation. But you could also have a question about change orders in project management, where like maybe it's a question that says, in order to reduce change orders, because our client doesn't like being surprised by things, how could you reduce change orders? And the answer for that might be something like institute quality control, a scope control project, or review effectively with the client and with the contractor. Or maybe it means you should recommend that they do a construction manager or something, so that there's ways that effectively what is the same question can show up in multiple places. You could also imagine similar issues with something like footings or foundations. We could clearly be talking about footings and foundations in the programming and analysis phase, where you're doing the research, and the research might be included with the soils geotechnical report, and it says, analyze this geotechnical report and tell us something about what kind of foundation and footing makes the most sense for this particular situation, where there's no design yet. You're not being specific. You're not talking about an exact set of loads or anything like that. You're just talking about what makes sense in this context given this piece of information. So that is an example of how that question could happen in programming and analysis. But then you could have that exact same question happening in project planning and design, where now it's a more specific question. It's got maybe some loading information in it. It's got you're actually sizing the footing. You're talking about there's 91 kips of load coming down the column and blah blah blah, and there's a 3,000 PSF soil. How big is that footing going to have to be? It could be that kind of question. And then, you could have similar, more detailed, maybe in 5, it might be about, well, where's the rebar go in that footing? And so you would have to place the rebar into the drawing of the footing. And then under the last one, under construction and evaluation, you might have a question that would be, all right, they're pouring the footing, and you watch them, and they're doing a slump test. And the slump is a slump of 8, which means it's a lot of slump, and that concrete is really watery. And they're pouring the footing. How do you feel about that? The whole building is sitting on this thing with what's probably going to be pretty no good concrete, right? So it's the same question. We're talking about different aspects of that footing, and now it can show up in any of those exams. So the silo version of these things has certain advantages, and this one has certain disadvantages, But the advantage here is I do think there is a logic to it, and it fits into the way that we already think about architecture.
Do have one interesting question here. So Kevin Todd is noting that the scheduled time for A.R.E. 4 is about 33 hours, whereas for A.R.E. 5 it's about 25 hours at the exam center. So he just wants confirmation that in fact the duration of testing has gone down.
Yeah, so the duration of testing has gone down. The reason I was saying it was roughly equal is that one of the reasons there's such a big leap is that you're getting rid of schematic design. And schematic design is a big time one. It has the building design is whatever 4 hours or whatever it is, and the interior layout is an hour, and then there's time in between. So once you take that away, because there are no more vignettes, the vignettes are gone. So once you take that away, it kind of equalizes. It's still a little bit less, I think. I think you're right about that. But I would imagine it, like I think it's useful to think of it as essentially the same in terms of the multiple choice.
I will say that I think my favorite thing that they sort of confirmed is that there's less structures on A.R.E. 5 than there is on A.R.E. 4, which for me, I mean, I absolutely hated that. So
I think, Mark, I believe your line was, you're blowing the lead.
That's right.
The lead here is A.R.E. 5, less structures. And that's true. It will be less structures, and it will be less systems. Probably contracts will be about the same. I wouldn't necessarily rejoice about that, and here's why. Because there'll be fewer questions, but the range of questions might be kind of similar, and so it's not like you can just ignore whole swaths of structures. Like it's not like they're going to say, all right, we're not going to ask you any questions about steel. And you can just ignore steel. Like you're still going to get steel, concrete, wood. You're still going to get all those other kinds of things. So, but that is, I think, a more logical thing, because the structures exam is right now, in my mind, kind of nutty. It forces people to study things that I think are not terribly useful for the average architect, especially average young architect. So I think it's a good thing from that standpoint, and yeah, I agree. That was definitely one of the funnier moments when we all realized that. Okay, I think the way these things are mapped out makes sense. Key here is the drawing vignettes, which are a big part of 4.0, these big drawing programs, if you can call it drawing, are long gone. There are a few multiple choice type questions now. There's a rather cryptic note down at the bottom because it's missing a word, but there's a few multiple choice type questions that now are more drawing like, but they're fast multiple choice, simple type questions.